See, winter comes to rule the varied year, sullen and sad with all his rising train, vapours and clouds and storms. Be these my theme, these that exalt the soul to solemn thought and heavenly musing. Welcome, kindred glooms. Congenial horrors, hail! With frequent foot pleased have I, in my cheerful morn of life, when nursed by careless solitude I lived, and sung of nature with unceasing joy. Pleased have I wandered through your rough domain, trod the pure virgin snows, myself is pure, heard the winds roar and the big torrent burst, or seen the deep fermenting tempest brood in the grim evening sky. Thus passed the time, till through the lucid chambers of the south looked out the joyous spring, looked out and smiled. Now, when the cheerless empire of the sky to Capricorn the centaur archer yields, and fierce Aquarius stains the inverted year, hung o'er the farthest vestige of heaven, the sun scarce spreads o'er ether the dejected day. Faint are his gleams, and ineffectual shoot his struggling rays in horizontal lines through the thick air, as clothed in cloudy storm, weak, wan, and broad he skirts the southern sky, and soon descending to the long dark night, wide shading all, the prostrate world resigns. Nor is the night unwished, while vital heat, light, life, and joy the dubious day forsake. Meanwhile, in sable cincture, shadows vast, deep-tinged and damp, and congregated clouds, and all the vapoury turbulence of heaven involve the face of things. Thus winter falls, a heavenly gloom oppressed o'er the world, through nature shedding influence malign, and rouses up the seeds of dark disease. The soul of man dies in him, loathing life, and black with more than melancholy views. The cattle droop, and o'er the furrowed lands, fresh from the plough, the dun, discoloured flocks, untended, spreading, crop the wholesome root. Along the woods, along the moorish fens, sighs the sad genius of the coming storm. And up among the loose, disjointed cliffs and fractured mountains wild, the brawling brook and cave, presageful, sends a hollow moan, resounding long in listening's fancy ear. Nature, great parent, whose unceasing hand rolls round the seasons of the changeful year, how mighty, how majestic are thy works, with what a pleasing dread they swell the soul, that seems astonished, and astonished sings. Ye too, ye wind, that now begin to blow with boisterous sweep, I raise my voice to you. Where are your stores, ye powerful beings? Say, where are your aerial magazines reserved to swell the brooding terrors of the storm? In what far distant region of the sky, hushed in deep silence, sleep you when 'tis calm? When from the pallid sky the sun descends, with many a spot that o'er his glaring orb uncertain wanders, stained, red fiery streaks begin to flush around. The reeling clouds stagger with dizzy poise, as doubting yet which master to obey, while rising slow, blank in the leaden-coloured east, the moon wears a wan circle round her blunted horns. Seen through the turbid, fluctuating air, the stars obtuse emit a shivering ray, or frequent seem to shoot athwart the gloom, and long behind them trail the whitening blaze. Snatched in short eddies plays the withered leaf, and on the flood the dancing feather floats, with broadened nostrils to the sky upturned. The conscious heifer snuffs the stormy gale, even as the matron at her nightly task with pensive labour draws the flaxen shed. The wasted taper and the crackling flame foretell the blast. But chief the plumy race, the tenants of the sky, its changes speak, retiring from the downs, where all day long they picked their scanty fare. A blackening train of clamorous rooks thick urge their weary flight, and seek the closing shelter of the grove. Assiduous in his bower, the wailing owl plies his sad song. The cormorant on high wheels from the deep and screams along the land. Loud shrieks the soaring hern, and with wild wing the circling sea-fowl cleave the flaky clouds. Ocean unequal pressed, with broken tide and blind commotion heaves, while from the shore eat into caverns by the restless wave, and forest rustling mountain comes a voice that, solemn sounding, bids the world prepare. Then issues forth the storm with sudden burst, and hurls the whole precipitated air down in a torrent. On the passive main descends the ethereal force, and with strong gust turns from its bottom the discoloured deep. Through the black night that sits immense around, lashed into foam, the fierce conflicting brine seems o'er 1,000 raging waves to burn. Meanwhile the mountain billows to the clouds in dreadful tumult swelled, surge above surge, burst into chaos with tremendous roar, and anchored navies from their stations drive, wild as the winds across the howling wastes of mighty waters. Now the inflated waves, straining they scale, and now impetuous shoot into the secret chambers of the deep, the wintry Baltic thundering o'er their head. Emerging thence again before the breath of full exerted heaven, they wing their course, and dart on distant coasts. If some sharp rock or shoal insidious break not their career, and in loose fragments fling them floating round. Nor less at hand the loosened tempest reigns, the mountain thunders, and its sturdy sons stoop to the bottom of the rocks they shade. Lone on the midnight steep and all aghast, the dark wayfaring stranger breathless toils, and, often falling, climbs against the blast. Low waves the rooted forest, vexed, and sheds what of its tarnished honours yet remain, dashed down and scattered by the tearing wind's assiduous fury, its gigantic limbs. Thus, struggling through the dissipated grove, the whirling tempest raves along the plain, and on the cottage thatched or lordly roof, keen fastening shakes them to the solid base. Sleep frighted flies, and round the rocking dome, for entrance eager, howls the savage blast. Then too, they say, through all the burdened air, long groans are heard, shrill sounds and distant sighs, that, uttered by the demon of the night, warn the devoted wretch of woe and death. Huge uproar lords it wide. The clouds, commixed with stars swift gliding, sweep along the sky. All nature reels, till nature's king, who oft amid tempestuous darkness dwells alone, and on the wings of the careering wind walks dreadfully serene, commands a calm. Then straight air, sea, and earth are hushed at once. As yet 'tis midnight deep. The weary clouds, slow meeting, mingle into solid gloom. Now, while the drowsy world lies lost in sleep, let me associate with the serious night, and contemplation her sedate compeer. Let me shake off the intrusive cares of day, and lay the meddling senses all aside. Where now, ye lying vanities of life, ye ever-tempting, ever-cheating train? Where are you now, and what is your amount? Vexation, disappointment, and remorse. Sad, sickening thought, and yet deluded man, a scene of crude, disjointed visions past, and broken slumbers, rises still resolved, with new-flushed hopes, to run the giddy ground. Father of light and life, thou good supreme, O teach me what is good. teach me thyself. Save me from folly, vanity, and vice, from every low pursuit, and feed my soul with knowledge, conscious peace, and virtue pure, sacred, substantial, never fading bliss. The keener tempests come, and fuming dun from all the livid east or piercing north, thick clouds ascend, in whose capacious womb a vapoury deluge lies, to snow congealed. Heavy they roll their fleecy world along, and the sky saddens with the gathered storm, though the hushed air the whitening shower descends, at first thin wavering, till at last the flakes fall broad and wide and fast, dimming the day with a continual flow. The cherished fields put on their winter robe of purest white. 'Tis brightness all, save where the new snow melts along the mazy current. Lo, the woods bow their hoar head, and ere the languid sun, faint from the west, emits his evening ray, earth's universal face, deep hid and chill, is one wild dazzling waste that buries wide the works of man. Drooping the labourer ox stands covered o'er with snow, and then demands the fruit of oil his toil. The fowls of heaven, tamed by the cruel season, crowd all around the winnowing store, and claim the little boon which Providence assigns them. One alone, the redbreast, sacred to the household gods, wisely regardful of the embroiling sky, in joyless fields and thorny thickets leaves his shivering mates, and pays to trusted man his annual visit. Half afraid, he first against the window beats, then brisk alights on the warm hearth, then hopping o'er the floor, eyes all the smiling family askance, and pecks and starts, and wonders where he is, till more familiar grown the table crumbs attract his slender feet. The foodless wilds pour forth their brown inhabitants, the hare, though timorous of heart, and hard beset by death in various forms, dark snares, and dogs, and more unpitying men, the garden seeks, urged on by fearless want. The bleating kind eye the bleak heaven, and next the glistening earth, with looks of dumb despair, then, sad dispersed, dig for the withered herb through heaps of snow. Now, shepherds, to your helpless charge be kind, baffle the raging year, and fill their pans with food at will, lodge them below the storm, and watch them strict, for from the bellowing east, in this dire season, oft the whirlwind's wing sweeps up the burden of the whole wintry plains in one wide waft, and o'er the hapless flocks, hid in the hollow of two neighbouring hills, the billowy tempest whelms, till upward urged the valley to a shining mountain swells, tipped with a wreath high curling in the sky. Ah, little think the gay licentious proud, whom pleasure, power, and affluence surround, they who their thoughtless hours in giddy mirth and wanton, often cruel riot waste. Ah, little think they, while they dance along, how many feel this very moment death, and all the sad variety of pain. How many sink in the devouring flood, or more devouring flame? How many bleed by shameful variance betwixt man and man? How many pine in want and dungeon glooms, shut from the common air and common use of their own limbs? How many drink the cup of baleful grief, or eat the bitter bread of misery, sore pierced by wintry winds? How many shrink into the sordid hut of cheerless poverty? How many shake with all the fiercer tortures of the mind, unbounded passion, madness, guilt, remorse, whence, tumbled headlong from the height of life, they furnish matter for the tragic muse. Even in the vale where wisdom loves to dwell, where friendship, peace, and contemplation joined, how many, racked with honest passions, droop in deep retired distress? How many stand around the death-bed of their dearest friends, and point the parting anguish? Thought fond man of these, and all the thousand nameless ills that one incessant struggle render life, one scene of toil, of suffering, and of fate, vice in his high career would stand appalled, and heedless of rambling impulse learn to think. The conscious heart of charity would warn, and her wide wish benevolence dilate. The social tear would rise, the social sigh, and into clear perfection, gradual bliss, refining still the social passion's work. Now, all amid the rigours of the year, in the wild depth of winter, while without the ceaseless winds blow ice, be my retreat, between the groaning forest and the shore, beat by the boundless multitude of waves, a rural, sheltered, solitary scene, where ruddy fire and beaming tapers join to cheer the gloom. There, studious, let me sit and hold high converse with the mighty dead, sages of ancient time, as gods revered, as gods beneficent, who blessed mankind with arts and arms and humanized a world. Roused at the inspiring thought, I throw aside the long-lived volume and deep-mused hail the sacred shades that slowly rising pass before my wandering eyes. First Socrates, who firmly good in a corrupted state against the rage of tyrants single stood, invincible. Calm reason's holy law, that voice of God within the attentive mind, obeying, fearless, or in life or death, great moral teacher, wisest of mankind. Solon the next, who built his commonweal on equity's wide base, by tender laws a lively people curbing, yet undamped, preserving still that quick, peculiar fire, whence in the laurel fields of finer arts and of bold freedom they unequalled shone, the pride of smiling Greece and humankind. Lycurgus then, who bowed beneath the force of strictest discipline, severely wise all human passions. Following him I see, as at Thermopylae he glorious fell, the firm, devoted chief, who proved by deeds the hardest lesson which the other taught. Then Aristides lift his honest front, spotless of heart, to whom the unflattering voice of freedom gave the noblest name of just, in pure majestic poverty revered, who, even in his glory to his country's weal submitting, swelled a haughty rival's fame. Reared by his care of softer ray appears Cimon, sweet-souled, whose genius, rising strong, shook off the load of young debauch abroad, the scourge of Persian pride. At home the friend of every worth and every splendid art, modest and simple in the pomp of wealth. Of rougher front, a mighty people come, a race of heroes, in those virtuous times which knew no stain save that with partial flame their dearest country they too fondly loved. Her better founder first, the light of Rome, Numa, who softened her rapacious sons, Servius, the king who laid the solid base, on which o'er earth the vast republic spread. Then the great consul's venerable rise, the public father who the private quelled, as on the dread tribunal, sternly sad, he whom his thankless country could not lose, Camillus, only vengeful to her foes, Fabricius, scorner of all conquering gold, and Cincinnatus, awful from the plough, thy whilom victim, Carthaga, bursting loose from all the pleading nature could oppose, from a whole city's tears by rigid faith, imperious called, and honour's dire command, Scipio, the gentle chief, humanely brave, who stood the race of spotless glory ran, and warm in youth to the poetic shade with friendship and philosophy retired. Tully, whose powerful eloquence awhile restrained the rapid fate of rushing Rome, unconquered Cato, virtuous in extreme, and thou, unhappy Brutus, kind of heart, whose steady arm by awful virtue urged, lifted the Roman steel against thy friend. Thousands besides the tribute of averse demand, but who can count the stars of heaven, who sing their influence on this lower world? Behold who yonder comes in sober state, fair, mild, and strong as in a vernal sun. 'Tis Phoebus' self, or else the Mantuan swain, Great home, too, appears, of daring wing, parent of song, and equal by his side the British muse. Joined hand in hand they walk, darkling, full up the middle steep to fame. Nor absent are those shades whose skilful hand pathetic drew the impassioned heart, and charmed, transported Athens with the moral scene, nor those who, tuneful, wait the enchanting lyre. First of your kind, society divine, still visit thus my nights, for you reserved, and mount my soaring soul to thoughts like yours. Silence, thou lonely power, the door be thine. See on the hallowed hour that none intrude, save a few chosen fans, that sometime deign to bless my humble roof with sense refined, learning digested well, exalted faith, unstudied wit, and humour ever gay. Or from the Muses' hill will Pope descend to raise the sacred hour, to bid it smile, and with the social spirit warm the heart. For, though not sweeter his own Homer sings, yet is his life the more endearing song. The city swarms intense, the public haunt, full of each theme and warm with mixed discourse, hums indistinct. The sons of riot flow down the loose stream of false enchanted joy to swift destruction. On the rankled soul the gaming fury falls, and in one gulf of total ruin, honour, virtue, peace, friends, families, and fortune headlong sink. Up springs the dance along the lighted dome, mixed and evolved 1,000 sprightly ways. The glittering court effuses every pomp. The circle deepens, beamed with gaudy robes, tapers and sparkling gems and radiant eyes. A soft effulgence o'er the palace waves, while a gay insect in his summer shine, the fop, light fluttering, spreads his mealy wings. Dread o'er the scene the ghost of Hamlet stalks. Othello rages, poor Monimia mourns, and Belvidera pours her soul in love. Deep thrilling terror shakes, the comely tear steals o'er the cheek, or else the comic muse holds to the world a picture of itself, and raises sly the fair impartial laugh. Sometimes she lifts her strain and paints the scenes of beauteous life. Whate'er can deck mankind, or charm the heart, in generous bevel showed. O thou, whose wisdom solid yet refined, whose patriot virtues and consummate skill to touch the finer springs that move the world, joined to whate'er the graces can bestow, and all Apollo's animating fire, give thee with pleasing dignity to shine at once the guardian, ornament, and joy of polished life. Permit the rural muse, O Chesterfield, to grace thee with her song. Ere to the shades again she humbly flies, indulge her fond ambition in thy train, for every muse has in thy train a place, to mark thy various full accomplished mind, to mark that spirit which with British scorn rejects the allurements of corrupted power, that elegant politeness which excels even in the judgment of presumptuous France, the boasted manners of her shining court, the wit, the vivid energy of sense, the truth of nature, which with Attic point the kind, well-tempered satire, smoothly keen, steals through the soul and without pain corrects. Or, rising thence with yet a brighter flame, O let me hail thee on some glorious day, when to the listening senate ardent crowd Britannia's sons to hear her pleaded cause. Then, dressed by thee more amiably fair, truth the soft robe of mild persuasion wears. Thou to assenting reason giv'st again her own enlightened thoughts, called from the heart. The obedient passions on thy voice attend. And even reluctant party feels a while thy gracious power, as though the varied maze of eloquence, now smooth, now quick, now strong, profound and clear, you roll the copious flood. To thy loved haunt return, my happy muse, for now, behold, the joyous winter days, frosty succeed, and through the blue serene for sight to find the ethereal nitre flies, killing infectious damps, and the spent air storing afresh with elemental life. Close crowds the shining atmosphere and binds our strengthened bodies in its cold embrace. Constringent feeds and animates our blood, refines our spirits, through the new-strung nerves in swifter sallies darting to the brain, where sits the soul, intense, collected, cool, bright as the skies, and as the season keen. All nature feels the renovating force of winter, only to the thoughtless eye in ruin seen. The frost-concocted glebe draws in abundant vegetable soul and gathers vigour for the coming year. A stronger glow sits on the lively cheek of ruddy fire, and luculent along the purer rivers flow, their sullen deeps, transparent, open to the shepherd's gaze, and murmur hoarser at the fixing frost. What art thou, frost? And whence are thy keen stores derived, thou secret all-invading power, whom even the elusive fluid cannot fly? Is not thy potent energy unseen, myriads of little salts, or hooked or shaped like double wedges, and diffused immense through water, earth, and ether? Hence at eve, steamed eager for the red horizon round, with the fierce rage of winter deep suffused, an icy gale oft shifting o'er the pool breathes a blue film, and in its mid-career arrests the bickering stream. The loosened ice, let down the flood and half dissolved by day, rustles no more, but to the sedgy bank fast grows, or gathers round the pointed stone. A crystal pavement, by the breath of heaven cemented firm, till, seized from shore to shore, the whole imprisoned river growls below. Loud rings the frozen earth, and hard reflects a double noise, while at his evening watch the village dog deters the nightly thief. The heifer lows, the distant waterfall swells in the breeze, and with the hasty tread of traveller the hollow-sounding plain shakes from afar. The full ethereal round infinite worlds, disclosing to the view, shines out intensely keen, and all one cope of starry glitter glows from pole to pole. From pole to pole the rigid influence falls through the still night, incessant, heavy, strong, and seizes nature fast. It freezes on till morn, and late rising o'er the drooping world lifts her pale eye, unjoyous. Then appears the various labours of the silent night, prone from the dripping eve and dumb cascade, whose idle torrents only seem to roar, the pendant icicle, the frostwork fair, where transient hues and fancied figures rise. Wide-spouted o'er the hill, the frozen brook, a livid track, cold gleaming on the morn, the forest bent beneath the plumy wave, and by the frost refined, the whiter snow, encrusted hard and sounding to the tread of early shepherd, as he pensive seeks his pining flock, or from the mountain top, pleased with the slippery surface, swift descends. 'Tis done. Dread winter spreads his latest glooms, and reigns tremendous o'er the conquered year. How dead the vegetable kingdom lies, how dumb the tuneful. Horror wide extends his melancholy empire. Here, fond man, behold thy pictured life, pass some few years, thy flowering spring, thy summer's ardent strength, thy sober autumn fading into age, and pale concluding winter comes at last and shuts the scene. Ah, whither now art fled, those dreams of greatness? those unsolid hopes of a happiness, those longings after fame, those restless cares, those busy, bustling days, those gay spent festive nights, those veering thoughts lost between good and ill that shared thy life, all now are vanished. Virtue sole survives, immortal, never failing friend of man, his guide to happiness on high. And see, 'tis come, the glorious morn, the second birth of heaven and earth. Awakening nature hears the new creating word, and starts to life in every heightened form, from pain and death forever free, the great eternal scheme involving all, and in a perfect whole uniting, as the prospect wider spreads, to reason's eye refined, clears up apace. Ye vainly wise, ye blind presumptuous, now confounded in the dust, adore that power and wisdom oft arraigned. See now the cause, why unassuming worth in secret lived and died neglected, why the good man's share in life was gall and bitterness of soul, why the lone widow and her orphans pined in starving solitude, while luxury in palaces lay straining her low thought to form unreal wants, why heaven-born truth and moderation fair wore the red marks of superstition's scourge, why licensed pain, that cruel spoiler that embosomed foe, embittered all our bliss. Ye good distressed, ye noble few, who here unbending stand beneath life's pressure, yet a little while, and watch your bounded view, which only saw a little part, deemed evil, is no more. The storms of wintry time will quickly pass, and one unbounded spring encircle all.